Welcome back to the Puckn Pod. On today's episode, we bring back another This or That, followed by our favorite sports villains, and finally, our favorite movie villains. That's all coming up next right here on the Puckn Pod. Let's Puckn go. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Puckn Pod. My name is Joe.
My name is Brandon.
And I'm Paul.
Well, gentlemen, we got a lot to talk about, but first, before we get into anything, I want to play a little game, a game you might be familiar with. This game is called This or That. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It's time once again for This or That. This is where you get to choose between one thing or another, and I want you to kind of give me your answer as to why you made that decision, all right? So we're going to do one sports-related and one movie-related, okay?
You do realize this is the highlight of my, every 4 weeks, right?
I did not know that, actually, so that's good to know. we got a fun one, then, to play here. We're going to start with sports, specifically, and you have to choose one, all right? So in this case, Gritty or the Philly Fanatic?
I really can't stand the look of the Philly Fanatic, so I'll go Gritty.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Can you give me more of a reason why? Like, what is it about the Philly Fanatic that you can't stand?
Oh, it says, the baseball one.
Yeah, it's the one with the horn for a mouth.
And he's green.
It's just, I don't know. It looks like a rated R kind of cartoon character, and I find him just kind of annoying to look at, and like some of the little side shows that they do on the field and stuff with him. I don't know. I get annoyed by seeing him. Gritty, it's hockey. He kind of bleeds kind of Philadelphia and the Bash Brothers kind of mentality. So I kind of like Gritty for that reason.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to go the complete opposite of you, and everything you just said, I think Gritty scares the hell out of me looking at him. And Fanatic, I love the antics on the field, and the whole grabs his belly and shakes it in people's faces and makes fun of him. And he's a good dancer too, because he does these dance moves and stuff on the field. I think it's hilarious. I'm definitely going with the Philly Fanatic.
Part of me feels like that Gritty and the Philly Fanatic are very similar in terms of their character style. The sort of belly that moves when the feet are standing still, but they can move the belly.
Yeah, I love it.
Both characters can do that, and they're both kind of weird looking. You look at them both and you're just like, where did they come up with these ideas? But that's the point. I think they embrace that weirdness, right? And that's kind of the point of it all. I personally think Gritty is more entertaining, but that's just because I don't watch baseball. So for me, Gritty is the one that takes it for me, and obviously very famous mascot in the NHL, considering the fact that he's got his own Twitter and YouTube and all that stuff. People are very much into Gritty. I'd say the Gritty is the one that takes it for me.
Gotta wonder if the critters are on their magical mushrooms all the time.
Now, you talked about the Bash Brothers, so I'm going to give you a choice of the Hanson Brothers or the Bash Brothers.
I'll go first. I'll say the Bash Brothers, strictly because I haven't seen Slapshot.
Okay, all right.
And I mean, I grew up with the Bash Brothers.
Yeah.
Hanson Brothers for me, just because I did see Slapshot and they made that movie.
I think between the two, the Hanson brothers are probably the more violent of the brothers,
100%.
Just for the fact that they made themselves famous in Slapshot for, literally making people bleed. That was the point of it, right? Whereas the Bash brothers, they were throwing their bodies around in Mighty Ducks, and that's kind of what people were, they got excited when they threw a check or whatever, but they worked together to throw a check. Most of the stuff the Bash brothers did would not be a legal thing to do in the NHL,
No.
but the same could be said for the Hanson brothers, I think, too.
Dean Portman also wore my favorite number.
Oh, is that right?
21.
There you go.
Nice.
Yeah, that'll do it. Wearing your favorite number will do it. I think I would go with the Hanson brothers too, just for the entertainment factor. And I use this word loosely, but the realism of what they do. Again, loosely realism.
So I before you move on, Joe, I want to say something real quick, because I think it was actually at the trade deadline last week, one of the segments on TSN, they showed a clip of the Hanson brothers in a sequence. from the movie. And I was watching it, and I'm thinking to myself, so all three of these guys are lined up one after the other, going after a check. Who the hell's back checking?
Now, I have a feeling I know where you're going to go with this, but I'm going to say it anyway just because I'm curious. Sports radio talk shows or TV sports panels?
Oh, 100% TV sports panels. I don't mind some of like the podcasting or radio in regards to some of the analysis, but when you're watching the analysts, right, they have some of the graphics to back up the video to back up what they're saying. It just seems that it's on that extra professional level because you're seeing it. Why it just feels more professional, more organized, more to it than the radio.
I won't go specifics into the individuals involved, but what I will say is this. I'm going to pick panels. The reason for that, as an example of, is that if I see that the Leafs are playing on TSN, I cannot wait to watch that broadcast.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When I see that they're on Sportsnet, I'm kind of like, okay, whatever.
That's interesting.
And,
Yeah.
and honestly, and it really, a lot of it has to do with the personnel. I think it's the style. Sportsnet
Like the
seems to be
broadcast style?
Sportsnet seems to be more informative and like by the book, whereas TSN seems to have a little more fun with it.
Yeah.
And they seem to have a little bit more personality. And I would say I think TSN's kind of the OG of sports panels in Canada.
Yeah.
At least if you take away like MSNBC or ESPN and stuff in the States over the years. But that's my reasoning.
For me, I tend to choose radio broadcasts, and the reason why, specifically when it comes to not to sports broadcasts, like listening to play-by-play on sports, but listening to analysts on sports, I find that you're getting more verbal details. You almost understand what they're talking about clearer because of the fact that they're explaining what they're talking about. They don't have graphics to follow up, so they have to be more detailed in the way they discuss things. And it reminds me a lot of what we do in terms of recording podcasts. We have to be detailed based on how we speak and talk about numbers and things like that. What Paul does with his numbers and stuff. So I think I relate more to the radio broadcast. That being said, obviously I enjoy watching TV broadcasts. There's a lot of the panelists on TV that I'm not a fan of, whereas the radio ones I'm a fan of because they don't, usually it's local guys that I follow anyway, right, radio wise. So I think that's probably why.
Please don't say Sakaris and Price.
No, they're on podcasts, so they don't count on the radio.
They
anymore.
were. They were on the radio.
I did enjoy Sakaris and Price.
Oh my God. Every time Matthew Sakaris opened his mouth, I changed the channel.
You know what was interesting about Matt? Maybe I don't know anything about Matt Sakaris, so I can't tell you if he has a legit problem, but I always felt like he was plugging his nose when he talked.
I think that's just the sound of his voice.
I think, honestly, it was the specific microphones they use.
Yeah.
They use these microphones that wrap around your face or whatever. But I remember thinking that when he was on the radio, I was like, is he plugging his nose? But no, I enjoy a couple of different shows on the Sportsnet channel because all we have now locally is the Sportsnet channel for sports. But I enjoy the discussion, and it's always really smart, really smart, detailed discussion when they're breaking down the way the Canucks specifically, what's the problem with the Canucks? Here's the problem. What's good with the Canucks? Here's what's good with the Canucks. Very detailed, and it doesn't leave you kind of going, what, I don't understand what you're talking about. Like, you usually understand what they're talking about. So let's move on to the movie side of things, and I might come back to a couple more sports ones later. But watching a movie at home or in theaters, and I'm pretty sure I've asked you this in the past, but I'd like to get your opinion one more time.
Definitely theaters. It's the sound. It's the big screen. It's the popcorn. It's the reclining seats now that they obviously didn't have, say, 20 years ago.
Yeah, more comfortable than my couch at home.
Yeah, and it's the whole experience. I believe we have talked about this before, and you and I both have said the same thing. The movie going experience. It's nice to be at home and spend time with your family and so on, but it's like any other activity that you could do at home, right? Like whether you're playing a board game or anything like that. Compared to the movies, you're going somewhere, and it's kind of almost a spectacle in some ways.
Not gonna lie, I forgot the question.
I said watching a movie at home or in theaters.
Thank you very much.
He was on his phone.
I was getting ready for my next segment. I'm going to go at home. You got everything you want here. It's cheaper. I can go to the bathroom whenever I want and pause it and not miss anything. However, what I will say is that if there's a movie that I really, really want to see, I'd prefer it in the theaters. If I'm just randomly picking a movie to see, definitely at home.
Let's and I'm all about going to the theater. For me, it's the experience more than anything. It depends on the movie, though. Like there are certain movies, like I'm not going to watch a documentary in the theater. Like I'll watch it at home, or I'm not going. Some comedies I'll just wait till it comes on streaming and I'll watch it at home too. But epic movies, like you do want to watch it on a big screen. You want to feel it. You want to hear it the way it's supposed to be, heard and stuff like that. So, and of course the popcorn and all that stuff too. Absolutely.
It's funny you say that. I was just thinking of a time here a couple of years back when you literally skipped the dishes popcorn movie.
Yeah.
Movie theater popcorn to the house just because you were craving it so bad.
I was so very badly.
Paul, can I have some? No. It's mine.
Now, I think I know what Brandon's going to say to this, but I'm not quite sure with you, Paul. Maybe I do know what you're going to say. You might be opposites in this one. 3-hour epic or 90-minute thriller?
It is going to have to depend on the movie. I probably lean more towards the 3-hour epic, just because I'm all about the character development, the meaning behind the characters in the story, getting to that major climax, and then what's going to happen after the climax to finish off the movie. And usually you can't really do that in a thriller because everything's kind of a in a thriller where it's all at once compared to, like I said, that epic. Like again, Lord of the Rings is a perfect example in regards to each and every one of the extended films were over 3 hours, and I loved every single one of them because of all of what I've just said.
Yeah.
How about I say this? I would lean towards a 3-hour epic, believe it or not, if I'm really into the movie. If it's just so, I'll give you an example.
Yeah, I was going to say, please give me an example.
If I'm, say, Avatar, 3-hour epic for me. Titanic, 3-hour epic for me. I just had another one in my head. Pearl Harbor, even 3-hour epic for me. Schindler's List. 90-minute thriller.
Okay, so obviously the reason behind the 3-hour epics, the reason they exist in the first place is because ultimately the director feels like this needs to be this long to be able to tell the story that they're intending on telling, right? Yeah. So I use Lord of the Rings as a perfect example because obviously all of their movies are 3 hours. But you need to get to that to be able to tell the story the way it's meant to be told. Whereas if you were to cut it down, and I use Justice League actually as a perfect example of this, because when Joss Whedon did Justice League, it ended up being a shorter movie and a lot of fans hated it. But then when they re-released it for Zack Snyder, it was like that much better because it was the way it was supposed to be told, right? And I think that's a perfect example of why 3-hour epics are important. But for me, ultimately, it depends, like you say, on the story. Like, I do love 90-minute thrillers. I do. And a lot of times I'll watch a 90-minute thriller and be like, man, I wish that was longer, So for me, I would choose the epics for that reason, because ultimately, if you're seeing the story the way it's supposed to be told, then it's how the movie should be. And in the end, you appreciate it more.
One movie that's really gotten me into, at least into the 90-minute thriller side of things, it was years ago that it came out, but Taken with Liam Neeson would be a prime example of a movie that was 90 minutes long, but it was nonstop and it kept you engaged the entire time.
Yeah, it was done well. It was done really well because you didn't feel like you were missing anything.
Yeah.
So that's a perfect example of a 90-minute thriller that probably should be a 90-minute thriller.
And I just remembered the final example I was going to think of for the 3-hour epic, and that's Wolf of Wall Street.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Perfect example. Yeah. That's a great one. Movie twist you saw coming or one that blew your mind?
Well, I mean, I'm always right, so that doesn't matter. I'm going to go with the one that blows my mind.
You don't like knowing you're right, though, in the end?
No, not really. Because, I mean, if I'm guessing and I'm right, well, it's a win, I guess. But if I'm guessing and I'm wrong, well, that means that something completely different happened, which makes it even more exciting.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'd say when I was younger, it was the one that blows my mind. But to be honest, it's the one I'm anticipating now. With all I've experienced on watching movies, if I can figure it out before it actually happens, I feel like proud watching the film.
Or satisfaction.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with that unless you say it out loud, and then I'm going to punch you in the jaw.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm more like what Brandon said. I appreciate a twist that blows my mind that I didn't see coming, because it makes me kind of appreciate the movie more, like the way it's written and stuff. Like, I saw the first Saw movie, believe it or not. I saw the first Saw movie, and when it ended, I did not see the ending coming. That happened. I did not know that was the guy, and I was like, I literally stood up and clapped. I was so appreciative of the fact that I didn't see that coming. So for me, I definitely think that's the winner for me. Like, ultimately, like, you think you have a movie pegged, and then it kind of blows you full circle, and you're just like, oh yeah, like that's awesome.
And then you almost immediately want to watch it again so that you can look at other things that happened in the movie to see if you can see if it makes sense.
The only downside to that is the ones you don't see coming, that where's the tie-in throughout the film kind of thing, right? Like, there are lots of movies that do. They just throw kind of some a random event that, and it's such a small event that made this character become the big character that they were. And to me, that never makes any sense when you have such a small event causing that big outcome.
Now, we all love action movies. We're all big on action movies. So this one kind of relates specifically to action movies. Epic fight scenes or car chases?
Epic fight scenes.
Why?
Yeah, explain your answer.
Both of them obviously have good choreography. They have to, especially with driving scenes.
100%.
You have to. You're closing down like blocks of streets to make some of these choreographies happening. I just think there's more physical and mental skill involved when you're doing kind of a fight scene, because there's a lot of memorization with that too. And it's again, a lot of them are choreographed, so there's not really, I guess, too much out of the realm of guessing while that's happening, but it looks cool on screen. Some of the tricks that they can do with the camera and the characters in terms of what their movements are, I just find it more fun compared to a car making a sharp turn and going down a tunnel or something, like, or backflip off of a boat or something, whatever it is.
Totally.
So I'll go with epic fight scene on one condition. You guys are probably going to roll your eyes, but if it's like realistic.
Yeah.
No,
Ish. What I mean by that is that I'm not going to pick a fight scene if it's the Avengers, or if it's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
I was thinking of that when you
or
said
The Last Airbender or something like that. Like, to me, no, I would pick a car chase at that point. But if it's like well choreographed, like lots going on, real martial arts, I would pick a fight scene every time. But now, if you just said fight scene or gunfight every time for me.
Yeah, interesting. No, I tend to agree that fight scenes are probably it for me. I do appreciate, the Bourne Identity movies, like the Bourne movies in general, they're all about fight scenes and car chases. Like the choreography in those is unreal. It's unreal, right? But I'm with you. I feel like that there's, with fight scenes, the one thing that actually wins me over specifically is not just the choreography, but also the way that the cinematographer, the style the cinematographer chooses. There is a movie called what's it called? It's got Eric Bana's in it. His daughter. They live in the wilderness in like Sweden or something. The wife dies. He lives with his daughter.
Yeah.
It's and then the daughter ends up going off on her own, and she's like a skillful. Hannah. Thank you. Hannah. There's a scene in Hannah where I think it's Eric Bana. Is it Eric Bana or is it?
Yeah, it's Eric Bana and Cersei Ronan.
Cersei Ronan. Yeah, she's the movie is awesome. And there's a scene where Eric Bana is fighting somebody, and the director chooses to make this a one-shot scene. So the choreography is all done in one shot, and the camera just keeps panning around while they're fighting. To me, that was a wonderful choice because I appreciated it that much more, that they had to remember all those moves and be able to do that scene. That, by the way, the cinematography style of having one shot is called mise en scène. For those of you who don't know, basically just means without scene, but it basically is without cutting. Basically,
I think you were talking about that when we were referencing the Goodfellas.
Yes,
that one scene where
that's right.
I have a major appreciation for that stuff because there's so much that goes into it. It's a very expensive shot in any movie. You think of the movie 1917, same thing. There's a lot of money that goes into that. But when it's done right, it's done really well. And that movie, I think, is a good example of something I appreciate with epic fight scenes. All right, so let's see, where are we going to go here now? There was one. Yeah. Time travel movies or alternate reality movies?
That's actually a tough one because I really enjoy both.
Me too. If done right.
If done right, absolutely. Probably alternate reality in the end for me. I really like the time travel aspect depending on what era the people are going into, whether it's the far future or the distant past.
And how it affects the story and things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But alternate realities, to me, just to have the same time frame, but everything's done differently. Maybe the government's different. Maybe what happened in World War II. Let's say the Allies didn't win and the Axis won, and you have a whole different kind of reality to what your current time is. I find that more interesting because it's interesting to think of the what if with that compared to say a time travel movie where you kind of know what's happened in the past, and a lot of future based kind of stuff in movies tends to be the same with floating cars and all this kind of futuristic technology. So I find alternate reality.
I'll be honest with you, Paul, that was a predictable answer for you. And the reason why is because your very favorite movie of all time is an alternate reality movie. So that's why I kind of knew where you were going with that. But I was curious more about what Brandon's answer would be.
Would you guys consider Interstellar to be alternate reality?
Kind of both.
That's kind of my question. Like when I think time travel, I like Bill and Ted or something.
I definitely would consider it alternate reality just for the fact that obviously it's not a physical possibility. In today's day, like you can't go to a black hole. Like we probably could, but we don't have the technology to do this.
No.
So I would consider it alternate reality, I think, more than anything. But yeah, it's
albeit Interstellar is set in the future.
Yes,
I believe like 50 or 60 years in the future.
And they also time travel because of the wormholes.
Exactly.
Not to give too much away.
Tough one, eh?
Yeah.
I'm actually gonna say time travel. I think because like in the example of say like Bill and Ted or back in the day like Ninja Turtles 3, Back to the Future,
Time Cop.
It kind of Time Cop. It adds kind of that historical factor,
totally,
which I'm always a fan of. When I think alternate reality, I think of like Marvel, right? And as much as I enjoy it, I find it sometimes can be hard to follow. Whereas the facts and whatnot involved with the time travel, I think makes it more on point.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think time travel would be the winner for me as well. Time Cop, one of my favorite Van Damme movies of all time. And then, Back to the Future, obviously, like one of the most epic movies. I could watch it. I have watched it a million times, and I can watch it a million times more and still have that appreciation for it. I really do hope they come up with another one. I think that would be so cool.
Yeah.
But I think you could also argue that time travel movies are also alternate reality movies because you travel back in time, change something, and now the reality is altered right in the end. So I think the argument's there.
Unless you're the Hulk explaining it to Ant-Man and the War Machine.
Yeah.
That's not how time travel works.
That's right.
I know that it probably wouldn't be a reboot. It would be more of a continuation. But if they did reboot Back to the Future, is there an actor that comes to mind first as an example that they would maybe cast as Marty McFly?
I
got one.
I mean,
I could see Tom Holland.
That's hilarious. I thought that too, actually.
I think I've seen a picture on social media with Tom Holland wearing the orange vest,
or the
red vest, and I think it was somebody like created it, AI created it or something. But like we all saw it, and we're like, yeah, that's for sure. That would make sense, right?
Nice.
He could play Marty McFly's kid or something, like easy, you know. But yeah, I think that would be incredible if they would do another Back to the Future movie. That would be so cool. All right, so just a couple more here, guys. I'm going to go back to sports for a minute. Home team play-by-play or national broadcast? Ironically, you guys are Leaf fans, so national broadcast means home team play-by-play for you guys.
Get off of it.
You know it's true.
Not really.
How is it not?
Have you ever heard CC and Craig Simpson call a Leafs game?
Yeah.
They hate Toronto, man.
Well, they still call them. It's the same broadcast.
Well, I mean, I suppose, but I thought you were like
you
digging at us.
You guys, when the
there.
Canucks and Leafs play, you guys don't get to hear John Shorthouse calling the play-by-play.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I thought you were digging at us a little bit.
Not at
there
all.
with that.
No, I'm just
So
saying.
that's why I'm like, dude, I don't know. I don't think they like Toronto too much. But you're right. That technically is a national broadcast.
Yeah. And it's the same, like the game against Calgary the other night. Vancouver played Calgary. Now it was in Calgary, so that's probably why. But it was the Calgary broadcasters that did the national game. It was a national game. But again, I think it's because it was in Calgary that we got the Calgary broadcasts.
I think I'll go national broadcast just because I'm used to it. When I hear something out of the ordinary, like the odd occasion where if I'm watching a game on center ice and you don't get the Leafs feed, you have to go with the alternate feed. It sounds funny listening to the game. Their takes are interesting because they're different.
Yeah.
But it sounds funny to me.
Okay, go ahead, Paul. Sorry, I'll let you finish
Okay.
first before I.
Because I used to have Leafs TV, I will probably go with the home broadcast because I really enjoyed when Joe Bowen was doing the broadcasting for the Leafs.
That's what I was going to say. I was a little surprised for Brendan to pick that because
Yeah.
Joe Bowen was like probably the Leafs homer, right? Like when you hear him kind of call. I mean, he does radio broadcasts for them now, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
When you hear him call, it's like his excitement is through the roof.
But I've never really experienced that.
Fair enough.
Watching Joe Bowen
Yeah,
call
fair
games
enough.
on TV.
Yeah, fair enough.
I've listened to the radio for sure. Like I've been out somewhere and can't watch the game. I'll turn the radio on my phone, Bluetooth it or whatever, and
used
listen to
to-
him. And he's amazing. I love this.
I used to wonder, I was like, what is he saying there?
Holy Mackinac!
Mackinac. All right.
But yeah, just I've always enjoyed that. Sometimes when I'm hearing, say, like if it's the U.S. national broadcast, and let's say it's like the Boston announcers, I really cannot stand that accent.
With the
and
accents,
they
yeah.
sound
Boston
like they're
accent.
taking a crap while they're calling the play. And
Just
I
watch
can't-
Marchand here. He gets the puck. He drives it to the net. Oh, what a goal.
Check out this Southie over here.
I'm about to die listening to this.
No, you're right though. For me, obviously, it is home play-by-play. I would way rather hear John Shorthouse call a Canucks game than Chris Cuthbert or anybody because it's not the same thing that I'm used to. And you probably don't see, like, if you hear Shorthouse call a game, you might not like Shorthouse, but like we as Canuck fans, we love him because it's what we're used to.
However, my only exception was the old broadcast team of Bob Cole and Harry Neal. I loved listening to them.
Oh baby.
But again, that's also Leaf broadcasts,
That's
right?
true.
Those were the guys that called the Leafs games.
But they also called the Montreal games.
That's right. They were the national guys. And the argument that we I say Canuck fans, there's a possibility that other teams in Canada argue this too, but whenever you see the Leafs play whoever, it's always Chris Cuthbert and it's always Craig Simpson. So you don't get that. You guys don't get to experience other broadcasters call Leaf games.
That's true.
If you're giving up Shorty, I'll take him.
Yeah, like it's like,
Why don't you give up Al Murdoch while you're at it?
but at the same time, like the same argument, I used to say that about when you guys got Jim Houston.
Oh, God.
Like you hated Jim Houston. We loved Jim Houston. I loved when he called Canucks games. When we got him in the playoffs, like when he was calling Leaf games and then like the Leafs were out and he was calling Canucks games, we loved having him because he was our broadcaster before, and then he went to the Leafs. So
Is there a specific... I got to ask this now. Is there a specific hockey play-by-play guy that... And you're allowed to say Shorthouse if you want.
Yeah.
That you just absolutely always look forward to listening to.
for me, it is Shorthouse for sure.
It was Joe Bowen, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really loved listening to him when he was calling the games.
Yeah.
It just felt like, with for me, it's not just the fact that he calls Canucks games, but we see him as neutral. Like, I know a lot of other fans will say he's a homer. Like, I've heard it in our series with Edmonton. They used to say the same thing, which he never actually called the games against Edmonton, except there was a couple of national games he did call for other teams. Again, not the Leafs, but other teams. And then people could hear, and they called him homers, which is so funny because we as Canuck fans think he's way too neutral. Like, he's too hard on Vancouver, and he's not, like, he's too pro other teams, And like when they score, like if an opposing team scores, he scores. Like it's not like, and he scores. Like he still has the energy that he would have for Vancouver if they were to score too. So yeah, I have a big appreciation for that. And I think too, as a PA, public address announcer, like when I do it, for me, energy is key. And if you're going to be an announcer in general and you don't have the energy, it's not worth listening to.
I'll pick Dan Marshall.
Yeah. No,
I mean, I'm half kidding,
but you know from personal relationship with the guy, he is one of the best out there.
Shout out to Dano.
Yeah.
If I were to pick a real play-by-play like NHL caliber, I would say I'd love listening to Gord Miller. He's my favorite.
I like Gord.
You know what's funny? I like Gord Miller as well, but I like him for the World Juniors. He feels like the kind of guy you want to be announcing the World Junior games. I don't know if I totally like him. Maybe I have to hear him more, but I feel like I don't like him necessarily for NHL games.
The reason
I know he does call NHL games though on TSN.
The reason I like Gord Miller and him and Mike Johnson together as a team, like Mike Johnson, as much as I love Ray Ferraro, Mike Johnson was basically the perfect replacement for Ray, I would say, because Ray was excellent. But Gord Miller, he's not a homer. He loves Toronto and he works for a Toronto-based organization, but he really, like, if he sees something go down that he doesn't think is right, he'll tell it how it is.
Yeah.
Which is why I like him.
Yeah, absolutely. No, for me, like, I don't care. We talk about this year. We talk a lot about the broadcasts that Prime is putting out there, and I've actually been really impressed with them.
Yeah, they have been good.
And then that includes the broadcast team. I feel like they have been very good at being neutral and they broadcast the game well. They present the game well, and I think that's something that the national guys should be looking at and thinking we need to emulate that in a lot of ways. My favorite thing about the Prime broadcast, though, which is so funny, is the fact that they show the warm-ups. And it makes you feel like you're there at the rink. You're watching the players warm up, and it's, for me, like, that's the best part.
They've done a very good job.
They really have. I think that's going to do it, guys, for this and that. I feel like we had some good ones in there. I'm going to save the sheet that I printed off, and maybe we'll go on with some other ones in a future episode. But, just talking a little bit about sports and some broadcasters that we don't like. Have you ever seen a broadcaster who you would consider a villain in sports?
A broadcaster that's a villain? Yeah. In my opinion, I can think of one.
I have too.
I wonder if
I can't remember his name. There was a specific game against Vancouver back when the Sedins played, and this specific broadcaster was such a homer. I guess there was an incident where a player got hurt or hit or something like that, and it was, I guess the Sedins were involved, and he was just ragging on them, and he called them like low lifes and stuff like that. And I think it was for Florida, a broadcaster for Florida, a former goalie, I think, was one of their broadcasters. Anyway, he called them low lifes because of something that happened. They didn't do anything malicious at all, but whatever it was, I guess the broadcaster didn't like. To me, that's a villain.
Yeah, if I'm looking at in recent memory for me, he wouldn't have been for most of his post coaching career, but Don Cherry, unfortunately, for kind of the comment that he made with those people, or I can't remember exactly.
He said you people.
While it didn't really necessarily affect me on much of a level, I understand why he got villainized for it based upon how culture and people are nowadays, and so unfortunately, he's one of those ones that will kind of be held that way as a villain.
It was Dennis Potvin. That's who it was. It was Dennis Potvin. Thank you for showing me that, Brandon.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, Dennis Potvin, I believe he was a former goalie, right? Or he was definitely a former player. But he was broadcasting a game where the Sedins were involved in a play where I guess one of their players got hurt or something like that, and he was calling them low lifes because they were involved in the play or whatever. But it's the Sedins, for crying out loud. They were probably the most kind players on the ice. Yeah. And you know what I mean? Like, and the guy's calling them low life. So I don't know. It's just, that villainized him to a lot of Canuck fans for sure.
Felix Potvin was the goalie. Dennis Potvin was a defenseman.
That's right. Are they brothers or?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So,
we are no relations, sir. My pick is Jack Edwards.
Yeah, from Boston. From Boston, who's now retired, I believe, right?
I think he was forced into retirement because of some of the stuff that he would say.
Yeah, well, and I think he was forced to retire because he was starting to like forget things. Like, I think he's slowly. I don't want to speculate. Like, dementia, but I mean, definitely falling into something where it felt like he was like slurring his words and like forgetting things. And yeah, so, I can see where you're coming from in the fact that it's Boston and their play-by-play guy in general. Like you don't want to be listening to their play-by-play guy talk about your
there's
team.
Dozens of times, and it doesn't even have to be against Toronto, but I've watched and heard highlight videos and whatnot and listened to him talk. It could have been, I don't know, San Jose playing Boston 10 years ago. And, Joe Thornton went after Brad Marchand at some point in a scrum and grabbed him and started feeding him or something. And you hear Jack Edwards, "Oh, that's so cheap water. I can't believe he's doing that. What a low, blah, blah." It's like, it's Brad Marchand, man. You can't be serious right now. And that happened constantly, especially with a Boston Bruins team throughout the years have not been fan favorites unless you're from Boston.
Well, you just named a player that I'm pretty sure you're going to name when it comes down to this next thing. But let's talk about sports villains, players that are villains, whether it's hockey, football, whatever. Can you name some villains that you have in mind?
Why don't we go off the board? I'll say like John McEnroe.
Good call. Good, very good call. That is off the board.
What a mouthpiece. And on the flip side of that, say someone like Serena Williams, right?
You know what's funny? I never saw Serena Williams as a villain, but I could totally understand it. Like she was damn good. The Williams sisters both were damn good at tennis. But it always felt like whenever they didn't win, that there was speculation upon the other player.
Oh, brat mentality between them for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
For me, going back onto the ice, I look at the Tanya Harding controversy back in the early 90s where she had her husband and bodyguard go after her competition, Nancy Kerrigan, to get into the Olympics that year.
Why?
Yeah, why?
I remember that so well. Brandon was probably just a baby, though.
When was that?
Yeah.
1994.
I was 7.
Okay, not a baby, but close enough. Yeah, that's definitely. I mean, that's a very memorable one. I think any Canadian would say Team USA, whatever sport, is the villain. But obviously, times like today, maybe outside of sports, but ultimately, like we are looking at tough times for both countries. But this past Four Nations tournament, USA was the villain to us.
Definitely.
Of course, they see it the other way, but that's how it is.
Staying with hockey, and I'm sure outside of Marchand being rat boy that he is, I'm sure we can all agree that Sean Avery was a pretty big villain.
He's up there. He's definitely probably 1 or 2 on the list for hockey.
Absolutely.
I remember watching one game. It was LA against the Rangers, and Yager was just skating by Avery, and I think slightly tapped him with a stick. It was like Avery was trying to jump out of the way of a car.
Yeah.
In terms of the biggest dive you'll ever see in your life. I didn't say it was just a little stick tap, but apparently he had the force of
shame on the referee though if he got called for that, because the referee should know better than to believe anything Avery does.
I saw Sean Avery on TikTok a couple of weeks ago explaining the Martin Brodeur rule, or the Avery rule, because of the Martin Brodeur situation.
Stick wavy.
And what he told me, or sorry, not me, but what he told we're on a first name basis. What's up, Shawnee? What he said, the explanation kind of was in his thought process, was that every time that it was his job to stand in front of Martin Brodeur, right? Mm-hmm. Well, Martin Brodeur was a bit bigger than him, and every time Sean Avery would do that, he'd get chopped in the back, chopped in the legs, cross-checked, and nothing was being called.
Yeah.
So I think it was game 3 of that series or something, Rangers and the Devils. Mm-hmm. And he went out there and he's like, I'm going to do something different. And he stood in his face and said, cross-check me now.
Yeah.
I'll take your effing head off.
Yeah.
Basically what he said, go ahead, right? And then that's what it came down to. That's how it started. But how about one LeBron James?
Yeah, I mean, I can. My wife is a Lakers fan, and she was miserable when they signed LeBron James because she's like, I hate that. I've always hated LeBron James. I don't understand why they would sign a guy I hate. But obviously it's helped them. They've won. I think they've won a championship with him on the team. Haven't
The
they?
Lakers?
Yeah,
one championship.
Yeah.
So I mean, there was a clip I saw the other day of a game, I don't know, a while ago, and I think it was the Suns, and a player went to go around after a pick and like grazed his face, and he flew backwards, man. And he does that all the time, and they call the foul.
That's a soccer mentality, right?
It is,
yeah.
And he's kind of become famous for it. Yet the referees still call fouls.
Yeah, it's too bad. It's funny because we talk about sports villains. This guy, I don't think on any other team would consider him a villain, but
No.
to Canuck fans, Mark Messier. And I could do a whole podcast talking about why this is the case. But Mark Messier is a villain to Canuck fans. So this guy took the number 11, off of a player who had passed away. The Canucks had sworn to his family they would never let any other player wear that number. Mark Messier joined the team, and they asked the family's permission. The family had not given the permission for them to use it. They still gave it to him. Mark Messier took the C away from Trevor Linden, took it away. He insisted in that contract stipulation, I want number 11 and I want to be captain. They took it away from Trevor Linden, who was the heart and soul of Vancouver Canucks. Gave it to Mark Messier. And guess what happened to that team? Nothing. Nothing happened.
So
They didn't get better. They ended up signing Mike Keenan to coach the team after firing Pat Quinn. And Mike Keenan comes and coaches the team, and he says, I don't want Trevor Linden on my team. They traded Trevor Linden, the heart and soul of the Vancouver Canucks.
Wow.
Guess what happened to that team? Literally nothing. So, to me, Mark Messier is a villain to Vancouver, and every Canuck fan would say the same thing.
So what you're telling me is then you never want a Canuck to win the Mark Messier Leadership Award.
It'll never happen. But the other thing about I have a YouTube channel, and on my YouTube channel, I talked about this thoroughly, that I believe the Canucks are cursed, and it starts with Mark Messier. And whether you believe in sports curses or not, to me, that's where the curse starts for Vancouver. They have never been. I mean, they've had spurs of awesome seasons. Like 2011 was an incredible season. 2012 was a good season when you consider the fact they won the President's Trophy back to back. But 2012 didn't even go past the first round. 2011 lost in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. They have not done anything since. It's tough. It's tough. If you're not a superstitious person, you're probably going, it's just superstition. But it's hard not to go down that path when you've had so much bad luck. I look at last year for Vancouver. Vancouver was a really good team last year. This year, injury, right? And then you have all the drama with the team and stuff too. So I place all that blame on Mark Messier. And whether Mark Messier sits there and goes, "Oh, that's not fair," I look at the kind of player Mark Messier was. If you go back and watch highlights of Mark Messier play, look at how dirty of a player he was. Look at how he would chop people down, and he would do all this stuff. Of course, back then you got away with a lot more, but he was a dirty player.
You talk about dirty players, and we can kind of circle back to the NBA because we talked about LeBron James. Dennis Rodman was pretty controversial in his.
A lot of people loved him for how controversial he was too, right?
And dirty.
Man, everything about that guy screams attention and bad attention, bad press, bad everything. On at a time where Chicago Bulls were the center of the sports universe in the 90s. Unless you're in Canada, maybe. But in the U.S., it was the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? It totally was.
Well, I mean, back in those days, it wasn't until the mid to late 90s that the Raptors and the Grizzlies even came into the league. So when you think about that era, it's around the same time, but we still followed the Bulls for Michael Jordan, for Dennis Rodman, for Scottie Pippen, like all these players.
Yeah.
They were an incredible team.
Well, and like I said, I mentioned being dirty, right? Like some of his on-court antics, like where he was kicking cameramen, or he head-butted like one of the referees. I believe it was Ten Bernhardt.
Yeah.
He even in front of the net and stuff like that, he was known for his elbows and just getting into people's faces. And it's fine to get into people's faces, but like he did it in a like almost like a scowling kind of way.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you're taught to go up for a rebound with your arms straight up in the air. Not Rodman. You're going up with wings up in
Elbows.
the air, right?
Yeah.
Elbows up.
Elbows up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then chin on the floor.
He's been obviously in the media for lots of things, wearing a wedding dress, talking about his sex life with Madonna.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to hear about that.
He was even escorted by police in terms of a fight where he was wearing a mask that he said that he had breathing difficulties with, and kind of playing that up. Gambling issues.
Yeah.
Siding with North Korea on things.
Yeah, he played the role of bad boy villain to a T. Like, he loved that role. And it made him money too. I mean, like, people were getting sponsorships for him and stuff like that continuously. So, I mean, obviously, if you're going to make millions of dollars in a specific niche, you're going to do that.
How about somebody like Alex Rodriguez?
Baseball, yeah.
I was thinking Barry Bonds.
Barry Bonds, yeah.
I grew up, I've never been a baseball fan, but I did like baseball for a little while when I was a kid, and I remember hating Barry Bonds. Absolutely hating. And you guys know this about me, but my least favorite thing about people's personality is arrogance. And 100%. Barry Bonds was like the epitome of arrogant. When I would hear him in interviews and stuff, like, he disrespected the people talking, asking him questions. And I just remember thinking, what a jerk. Like, you're making millions of dollars. These people they're doing their job, asking you questions, and you're going to be that way to them. I never liked that guy.
I think Alex Rodriguez, in terms, because you talk about arrogance, I think he was a very arrogant player too. But I think even more so after his baseball career, he's known for just kind of having this like posh kind of attitude about things, like, I was the best, too bad you all suck kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's frustrating. It's frustrating because you were so good. Why do you have to act that way? I don't get it. I really don't. Recency bias, maybe we'll leave out of it, but look at Wayne Gretzky as an example.
Yeah,
over the years, as humble as you can be, pretty much.
Pretty much.
Right?
Well, and he's trying to still be humble with everything that's going down even lately.
Yeah.
It's tough though. Like, obviously we're talking about, the political aspect of what's going on. And I don't think he kind of understands the reality of what's happening specifically in Canada. And I think that's why everyone's so upset at him, because he's sort of like, we were hearing his wife go on interviews and say, like, oh, he's heartbroken and stuff. Why isn't he going on these interviews saying this?
Yeah.
Why isn't he talking about it? So he's almost creating this villain role for himself. And it's unfortunate because obviously he is, the son of Canada when it comes to hockey. So
back to baseball, Paul. Pete Rose has to be on the list.
I agree. I was just going to ask you that.
But I have somebody else I think that takes the cake over Pete Rose. Completely different era, though. Ty Cobb.
I don't know who that is.
Second all-time hits leader, isn't he?
All-times, I think he's second all-time in hits, and he has the second highest batting average to ever end a year, and I believe he was the last person to ever hit 400 at the end of a season as well, in the MLB. But he was one of those guys, Joe. You're not sure who he is. Actually, it's funny that Tommy Lee Jones played him in a movie called Cobb in the early 90s. I know you said your dad was a big Tommy Lee Jones fan. Yeah. Ty Cobb was a belligerent alcoholic. Married and divorced like 6 times. He used to slide into second base at a time where you were allowed to wear steel spikes.
Feet
first, cleats up. Things like that. He would start fights.
Yeah.
He would, with players, umpires, coaches, fans, like whatever, right? This guy was like, I don't know how he was allowed to stay in the league.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're also talking the 1940s, 1930s, right?
Yeah,
so,
sure.
Yeah.
But I'd say as a kind of a character villain in a real live sporting situation, Ty Cobb has got to be one of the worst, really.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And then, of course, we can name all sorts of villainous wrestlers, right?
Oh, yeah.
Who was your favorite villain wrestler?
And if we're talking about WWE or what it used to be called WWF,
or WCW, I guess they amalgamated, so really it's one company. But
I actually really liked Kane when
Yeah,
he was
how do you not, right?
at the height of his like fame, I guess, in WWE. Just he seemed menacing, and again, he had his face covered too, right? He was the brother of the Undertaker, of course, and what they did with that.
Yeah.
But at the height of his kind of fame, he was menacing, and I kind of liked watching him.
I've got a bit of a cop-out answer, and I'm kind of going to give two.
Okay.
I'll give you one because he's my favorite all-time wrestler, but he did have a heel phase, and he did it well, and that's Shawn Michaels.
Yeah.
When he was with DX mostly.
I used to hate Shawn Michaels.
That was his heel phase, but honestly, I would say probably the most villainous person that I can think of in wrestling is Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
And all the things that he does to your favorite wrestlers during the time period in the shows, and you're just like, somebody take this guy out.
I would almost argue that Shane McMahon played a better villain. Really, like, when he played that villainous role, he almost took what Vince was to another level, because he also wrestled, and he went like hard when he wrestled. It was incredible. But I mean, I can appreciate that 100%. I remember being a kid, and when I went to that wrestling pay-per-view in Vancouver when I was, I don't know, probably 13 or 14. I think I was 14. And I got to see Mankind wrestle. And I didn't know who Mick Foley was at this time. Like, I was a kid, so I was still like kind of learning about it. But learning that he was Mick Foley, now that I know who Mick Foley is, probably one of the nicest guys in the world. But he played that character so creepy and so, like, I was terrified of Mankind, not knowing what he was or like anything. But that character, he did it so well. To me, that's probably one of the better, kind of villains that I can think of. I mean, I hated Shawn Michaels, so as a villain, he played his role, but I hated him as a good guy too. So I never understood how a guy that small could take on a guy like, Kane
or the Undertaker
and Big
win. Show.
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense.
That's kind of the whole point of wrestling.
It is. It really is. It's sort of a fantasy, but probably wrestling has some of the best, villains when you consider the fact that that's what their job is, to be villains, right? But it kind of segues nicely into our next segment, which of course is movie and entertainment villains, and probably wrestling kind of takes the cake when it comes to those. But there's a lot of great movie villains. I mean, who's somebody that you can think of that maybe takes the cake for top villain for you?
It's comic related. I kind of have to go with it because he's been betrayed so many times, and that's the Joker.
Yeah.
If you, even outside of the movies, the Joker is considered one of the most actually insane and maniacal characters ever created, because his motivations are no motivations. He just does it because it's who he is, kind of thing, right?
Who do you think played the best Joker?
So I'll name them off. There's Jack Nicholson in the original Batman's. Or Batman. There was Heath Ledger. There was Jared Leto, and most recently,
I can't remember his name.
Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin Phoenix.
You're also forgetting Burgess Meredith, of course, who played Mickey in Rocky. If you remember that actor, he played the Joker in the original Batman TV series.
That's right. That's true.
With Adam West.
I remember that. If you're thinking of the cartoon, like obviously one of the most renowned sci-fi characters ever, Mark Hamill playing Luke Skywalker. He's
an incredible voice actor.
He played Joker in the animated series and was great as that. A lot of people actually would say Mark Hamill is the best. Yeah. My personal favorite was Heath Ledger. Yeah, I thought he was just such a different take compared to what Jack Nicholson and even the cartoon Joker was.
And Joaquin Phoenix's Joker is obviously like, it's a different universe. Obviously he plays the psycho so well. Because there's something a little off with Joaquin Phoenix in general. So he kind of portrays that well, but definitely Heath Ledger, in my opinion, he went all out for that.
He was unexpected in that role. Like you would not have expected him to sound like that or even act like that as a character. And it was posthumously that he won the award, but he definitely deserved his supporting
absolutely earned it for
award.
sure. Yeah.
One of my tops, I have a few, but one of my tops is Jenny from Forrest Gump.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, she gave Forrest the runaround the entire movie.
Yeah, that's true. Well, until the end.
Well, yeah, because he was rich. I mean, he kept little
She
Forrest.
also had his kid.
Yeah, you know, how many times did Forrest Gump want to marry her and she said no, and then she found out that he had money? Oh, let's get married.
I'm not a smart man, but I know what love is.
Ever been with a girl, Forrest? No, he hasn't. Why don't you just tease him a little more?
So Brandon's a little bitter about that one.
I think one of my favorite villains, and it will be for a long time still, it was Christoph Waltz as Hans Landa.
Oh, yeah. Incredible.
Again, we talk about Ledger doing a job well. Like, yeah, Christoph Waltz, he made that character something that I think none of us expected.
I think that was kind of my introduction to Christoph Waltz as an actor, too. And just incredible.
I haven't seen that movie in full, so. Right.
But what's another one that you can think of?
How about Dr. Neil Miller from The Santa Claus?
Oh.
I mean,
you're talking, yeah, I love these. These are great.
This SOB tells Charlie at 8 years old there's no Santa.
And not only that, this is his stepfather, okay? Yeah. I am a stepfather as well as a father. If I were to do that to my wife's children and pass these messages on, like there is no Santa Claus or you know, don't believe anything your parents tell you, I'm sorry, you're out of here, buddy.
Yeah. And then he convinces his wife to get full custody over Charlie, not to mention this guy's taste in sweaters. Yeah. It's pretty unreal.
That alone. That's actually, those are good, man. I like that. Out of left field.
I'll go with another German villain, and everyone who's seen Bruce Willis in these films, Hans Gruber in the first Die Hard was fantastic.
Oh, man.
Absolutely.
Alan Rickman.
Rest in peace.
Very sad, man, because I didn't see him in much. I don't think he was in that much, really. He did a lot of dramas in kind of the 90s and early 2000s. Yeah.
I think he was in a lot of British stuff, too, that we don't get to see over
We don't get to see, that's right. But, I mean, just... his chops are just so finely tuned, and probably a lot of that comes from the stage, right? Mm-hmm. That was what he wasn't in a movie till he was in his, early 40s?
I think so, yeah.
So, I mean, his entire...
stage actor.
Yeah, his entire acting career beforehand was on stage. So, I just think talent that I really would have liked to have seen play out a little bit longer, or a lot longer for that matter, but... yeah, I agree with that.
It's funny, and later in his career, well, I shouldn't say later, maybe mid-career, he makes fun of his stage acting in a movie called Galaxy Quest.
Yes.
Which is also quite a hilarious film. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. But he makes fun of being a stage actor at one point.
He plays an alien in that movie. I have one that we haven't mentioned yet, and it goes back to a Tarantino movie, actually. Another Tarantino movie, I should say, and that's Kill Bill. David Carradine.
Yeah.
Incredible. Sinister, but almost, it's like you almost can relate to him in a lot of ways, you know, the way he plays the character. You can tell he's badass, like you can tell he's scary and you shouldn't mess with him. And we learn obviously that he is really the lead character, in this case, Uma Thurman's character, is kind of equal when it comes to ability and things like that. And she's also the only person that he really has ever loved, you know, and it's so like, it's kind of it's a beautiful story, but it's also like really gruesome in the end too.
He's got a sly confidence to him throughout the entirety of that. It was in the third one that he was
There's only two, chapter 1 and chapter 2.
The second one, sorry, my apologies.
Or volume 1 and volume 2.
Yeah, like he carried himself with that confidence all the way through. Like his motivations weren't pure, they weren't good, but he had no resent for what he was doing.
Yeah, exactly. The mother of his child, he tried. Yeah, I don't want to give too much away, but he basically tried to hurt her. In the end, not killing her like he thought he did, and yeah, pretty crazy. All because he felt like she broke his heart.
Yep.
It's a really good movie, bro. Seriously.
Okay.
Lots of action.
Yep.
Fair enough.
All right. So what do you got? Give me one. Give me a couple more here, boys.
I got two more.
Okay.
How about Ted from Jingle All the Way?
Okay.
I mean, he was sleeping with every woman on that block. He wanted to jump in the shower with Howard's wife. Like, what is this? Ate the cookies. Yeah. Those are Howard's cookies, man. And I mean, and then he tried to have sex with her in the SUV at the parade. Yeah. When Turbo Man was getting ready and everything.
You know what, though? These are very good examples of things that people wouldn't see as villains, but 100% that counts to me as a villain. 100%. Absolutely.
I know I'm kind of messing, but
it's true.
It is kind of true, right? It's a different spin on it.
And that, thinking back to Judge Reinhold's character in The Santa Claus, same thing. 100%. I totally see him as a villain. Every time I watch the movie, I'm like, that guy is the bad guy in this movie. He's holding everything back.
Like, I mean, how about an honorable mention? The pizza guy from Home Alone. Call the police, dude. You were getting shot at with a friggin' automatic weapon. Like, what are you doing?
Or like the guy playing Santa Claus near the end of the movie when he gives him a couple Tic Tacs and listens to him. And then he goes and drives off alone, letting this kid walk the streets by himself. Go home. Take him home to his family, for crying out loud.
One, I could name a bunch of like fictional characters like Sauron. I could name Pennywise, who was awesome, and even in the new It. Could probably even go with like Thanos. One that's more, I want to say, non-fictional that I thought he played it amazing. It kind of catapulted him into stardom. Was Javier Bardem playing Anton Sugar in No Country for Old Men. Brandon,
I don't think you've seen that one, right?
Or
you might have seen a couple scenes or whatever.
I believe twice I tried to watch it, and there was like nothing going on. I know you guys, I've stated before that I hate lots of dialogue. I think I might even hate more no dialogue.
The thing about this movie too, it's not just the fact that there's no dialogue. There's so much stuff happening underneath it all that, like, did you know? Maybe you knew this already, but did you know that there's no like music in this movie?
Yeah.
And you get the feeling of like sort of low, quiet music, but there's no music at all. And the sinister feel, your skin crawls when you watch this movie because of this character. Like, you just think, what is this guy going to do next? And he plays it so well.
If you want to imagine like the most menacing sociopath you could think of, that's Anton Sugar.
Yeah,
like there's no emotion to what he's doing whatsoever.
He literally gives the gas station clerk a coin to flip whether he's going to live or die.
Yeah,
and that's the way he plays it. It's like the gas station clerk has no idea why he's asking him to flip this coin, but you know that if it ends up being heads, he's dead.
And you'll remember that line. It's like, call it.
Yeah,
call it. And it's how it's I'm not doing it justice. It's how Javier Bardem would say it, but it's menacing. It's not like a call it. It's like, call it.
Yeah.
And there's just no emotion.
I dare you. Yeah.
Like, it's not even I dare you. It's like, something's going to happen.
It's not even dare it. If you don't do it, I'm going to kill you. Like,
and if you do it and it's wrong, I'm still going to kill you.
I'm still going to kill you. Exactly.
Wow.
This is not long after a scene where he killed somebody. Like,
yeah.
Just for no reason. Just like, psh, dead.
If I am naming my favorite fictional character, I gotta go with one of my favorite sci-fi villains. He eventually turned good at the end, but Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker.
I think Apollo Creed would be a good example of that as well.
Yeah,
somebody who's sort of like not a villain per se, but an anti-hero. Like, the first Rocky movie, he is the bad guy. He's the guy you're not rooting for. Rocky 2, you kind of start feeling a little bit like, you're not rooting for him. You're still rooting for Rocky, but like you kind of like at the end, you're like, I don't mind this guy. And then Rocky 3, they're buddies, and he helps him with the whole situation. So I think Carl Weathers got to play this character for 4 movies. Well, 3.5 really, if you consider what happens in the 4th one. But it was a character that you eventually learned to love, right? And he went from villain to somebody you were cheering for, especially the way they portrayed, Ivan Drago, who I would consider probably one of the biggest villains in all of the Rocky movies.
Yeah.
Apollo Creed's probably the perfect kind of heel turned baby face, so to speak, wrestling speak.
Well, you make mention about villains kind of making that turn. One of the things I consider that's kind of cool when you're watching kind of villains is there is what you can call the anti-hero, the villain that kind of has motivations that can be good, but they're
like
still
human. There's human aspects.
Aspects to their decisions, and Venom is considered a prime example because he was an enemy of Spider-Man all the way throughout the comics and the movies. But then he gets noticed as a good character, especially with the new Tom Hardy films. They really focus on the good side,
on the light. Yeah,
even though he's always known as an anti-hero. that'd be an example. Captain Jack Sparrow from the Pirates of the Caribbean.
That's probably a better example for sure.
Yeah.
In terms of anti-hero.
Again, motivations are selfish for himself, but he still does good in the end, right? Any other characters you can think of, Brandon?
Shooter McGavin.
Shooter McGavin.
Yeah, perfect. He's definitely
a sports movie villain.
Yeah.
I mean, do you guys know how many crimes this guy committed in that movie?
Oh,
Assault, harassment, conspiracy, bribery, public endangerment, fraud, sabotage, extortion, blackmail, theft. This guy's brutal.
yeah. And he's back for another movie
And
coming
he
up
was
here
probably friends with Hal.
soon. Yeah.
Can you believe
Yeah.
Hal told Gertie to shut the hell up?
You can bother me for a warm glass of shut the hell up. No,
Now your back's gonna hurt.
because you just pulled double duty. Yeah.
Mister, get this off of me.
God.
I can't believe that Shooter McGavin bought that house right out from under Happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, was flirting with his grandma.
Knowing that Happy was trying to do the right thing and get the house back for his grandma. So he went out of his way to hurt him and his grandma just to get him to quit golf.
Yeah.
And so
And then tried to have Happy Gilmore murdered.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think Happy got the last laugh in the end. Especially his boss helping him out there.
Even more than that guy on the 9th green who bent over and his butt cheeks were sticking out. He had ha and PPY
That's
there.
right. That's right.
Yeah, she goes, PPY.
That movie's, I think, probably, I would consider that, and as much as we love it, I think it's underrated. You know, I think it doesn't get enough appreciation from the rest of the world.
Hopefully the sequel is
I look forward
close
to
to
it.
good.
I look forward to it.
I hope it doesn't let us down. I'm stoked for it.
Well, gentlemen, I think that's probably a good place to leave it. Happy Gilmore with butt cheeks and everything. Probably a good way to wrap up the podcast.
Happy Gilmore! Oh my God!
I think this is probably a conversation we'll have to have again, talking about villains and maybe heroes, or even just anti-heroes, talking more about anti-heroes, people who we consider not bad guys per se in the movie, but people we don't look at as having good intentions, right? Yeah. And so if you, the audience, have any suggestions for us, please give us a comment. We're on YouTube, we're on Twitter, we're on TikTok, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're all over the place. Spotify, we're on iHeartRadio. I think we're also on Amazon now, I believe. I've heard we're on Amazon as well. Yep. So make sure you guys give us a comment. Let us know if you want us to talk about anything or if you want us to discuss anything. Please let us know. Once again, for the Puckn Pod, my name is Joe.
Brando.
And I'm Paul.
We'll see you guys in the next one.